What happens when you got John Travolta, Forest Whitaker, and Barry Pepper running around like a chicken with their head cut off while wearing some very gnarly dreadlock-styled wigs? You get Battlefield Earth, the year 3000. This is arguably the worst film ever made. No worst film of all time list can be complete without at least giving a little bit of credence to the film Battlefield Earth, the year 3000. It is a science fiction film based on an L. Ron Hubbard novel that stars John Travolta, Forest Whitaker, Barry Pepper, and a couple other bit players that have since progressed and have a decent career of their own self and decent career on their own. The film is bad. The film is bad. There's no other way to put it. It's almost bad from the word go. The story is horrible. The CGI is pitiful. The acting and sense of urgency that the film establishes, along with the timing or pacing of the film, doesn't really give it anything to work with. The actors almost seem like they're just beating their head against the wall in a lot of the scenes. A lot of the dialogue is very ham-fisted, very just doesn't make sense. In short, the film is basically where you have an alien race, they come, invade, take over Earth, and then we flash forward to 1,000 years or so in the future, while this alien race, is basically strip mining the Earth, using what humans are still left on it as their workers, because they are not able to breathe the oxygen, and they're not able to breathe the oxygen or deal with the radiation that was caused when the military tried to fight back against the alien forces, which decimated a large portion of the planet into radiation zones and areas where people are not believed to survive. Barry Pepper's character is one of those people that has since grown up in one of these exclusionary zones where there's a lot of radiation, so they don't really have any connect to the Cylons, which is the John Travolta, Forest Whitaker space alien characters. And he kind of travels off in the world to see what's there, to go and look for either food or new area, and ends up getting caught, thrown into their prison colony that they have for humans, and then forced to work. He is a fighter, Barry Pepper, so he automatically ends up catching the eye of John Travolta's character, who is an administrator, so to speak. He's not the highest guy to start with on the planet, but he's like the second or third, and he's trying to get off of the planet to go back to Cylon. And what ends up happening is he notices Barry Pepper's resolve and is like, maybe I can use him to kind of play the various factions against each other and help myself out in the end. There's a lot of really cheesy dialogue, like they call folks rat brains and things like that. And there's even one section where John Travolta gets Barry Pepper's character and takes him to this machine that is able to increase his intelligence, helps him learn the Cylon language, and then learn how to mine gold, which then in turn Barry Pepper uses it on some of his friends that he made in the film to help them in their rebellion or so against the Cylons. It then progresses to a bit about how gold is really all they're looking for, and that's all John Travolta's character is after. So he gets Barry Pepper and a couple other humans and takes them out to an area to mine a vein of gold out in Colorado. And at this point, it was kind of another spot where the timing doesn't really work. He's like, I'll be back in 7 days, so I need to have X amount of gold. They then leave with Barry Pepper and some of the humans running off to locate things such as Fort Knox, so they don't actually have to mine the gold. They just bring the gold here, give it to them, and then they go to Fort Hood in Texas, which is somehow still there. I mean, if I'm an invading Space Force, I'm going to take out the largest military base in the country, and that's Fort Hood. So it's still there. Well, they fly down there, and at Fort Hood, they learn how to fly airplanes. How do they learn how to fly airplanes? By spending approximately a week in the simulator, and all of them have the ability to fly these herring jets, which are the jets that can raise straight up and then take off instead of having to go and fly like a normal jet. And at this point, again, the plot is so convoluted, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and a lot of the motivation and actions of the characters are really kind of counter to what they do earlier in the film. And you just don't really know where anybody's going with this film. Another the main thing is after, they learn how to fly, then they give the gold to John Travolta, and he's like, well, we'll be back. So now they have another 7 days, and in that time period, they're planning their whole rebellion against him. Their goal is to break the dome where the majority of the Cylons are. That way it'll expose them to oxygen and turn to kill them. And also take a nuclear weapon, send it back to Cylon through the teleporter that they have. And once it gets there, because of the gases that they breathe are toxic, or they react differently with radiation. So in theory, you drop one nuke over there and it'll blow up the entire Cylon world, hopefully ending any issues you have with them for the future. Well, so the last human resistance is organized. They go and attack the Cylons. They start to lose a little bit, and then, they end up having the next group, which is these wild men that Barry Pepper meets and teaches them, helps them to be able to learn how to fly airplanes. They show up and end up helping the rebellion get the upper hand, breaking the dome that causes, all the gases to leave, and then, the Cylons start to choke out as the humans are then able to rebel and resist against them. The Cylon characters, they're about 7 feet tall, wearing some stilts that are like this big. They got massive boots. It's almost like the big stripper leather boots that they're wearing. They all have like these really awful looking dreadlocks on them, and it doesn't really make sense. Like, none of it does. There's a very good video on Film Courage by the writer Corey Mendelsohn, who wrote the film, and he kind of talks about his experiences being the writer of one of the worst films in history. And he talks about what happens with the studio system when you write a script and then you start getting the money people or the investors involved and the actors involved. And if they have a little bit more power, if they are a producer or so, they're going to try to twist it to their own vision. And he states in that interview that pretty much he wrote a draft, he liked it, it seemed to be good, and then that was the end of his involvement in the film. And then at that point, it goes through a bunch of rewrites, and we end up with the mess that we have on screen. And I can totally see that happening. It does happen a lot. And with this one, you can tell that they probably didn't have a full script when they started. He may have given them a full script, but then they went in, cut things out, started twisting things around. So a lot of the earlier setups in the film don't show up at the end of the film, and it doesn't really allow anybody to do anything in the film. It's just bad. Painful from the way it is shot. Almost the entire film is shot with a Dutch angle. What a Dutch angle is it basically takes the picture, twists it a little bit, and then moves it in. So it gives you a little bit of a perspective shift or change. And almost every shot is done with this non-level, non-flat shot. So there's almost always the picture is crooked and kind of hard to follow. So it doesn't really give those intense moments where you may normally have a Dutch angle, where it kind of zooms in or twists on somebody to give them a different perspective to what's going on, or thoughts that are going through their mind, or for some reason it creates a different way to look at it. And in this film, because it's almost entirely Dutch angles, you don't really get any emotional reaction from seeing it. It just throws you off, along with the choppy editing in a lot of places and the various contrivances they have with bouncing around, because they go from Colorado to Texas to Colorado and then to wherever this Cylon dome is. And then they also, it appears they go to Washington, D.C., to the Library of Congress. I'm not for sure where they see the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. And they talk about these were our people of old, the great humans that built our city. And it doesn't help the film. It's one of those ones where there's too much going on, whether it be shitty acting, bad CGI, poor story. Everybody involved has probably tried to wipe their name from the involvement in it. And part of the reason is it's so bad because it's one of those ones that spent $30-40 million or so on the production of the film. And to make something that bad is what makes it so worse. It just doesn't work. It seems like they just were spending money to spend money. And that's part of the reason why the film is so bad and potentially one of the worst films of all time, is because they had a very large budget, very high quality actors in John Travolta, Forest Whitaker, and Barry Pepper. In fact, Forest Whitaker would go on and win an Oscar for The Last King of Scotland. John Travolta's been nominated several times. And I don't know if Barry Pepper has or not, but he's had a lot of great roles. We Were Soldiers. He's in that one, and he usually does a good job. But in this, everything is bad, from the costumes, the massive wigs, stilts people are setting on, to just a really bad story in which it doesn't really make sense. Uh, but either way, it's a film that I kind of enjoy in a way because it is so bad it's almost good, in that everybody is, I don't know if they're necessarily giving their best performance, but they may have realized exactly what kind of turd they were making. So they just said, fuck it, let's just do whatever we can and go for it. And some of the characters, you can tell they're really playing up, that aspect of it. The one guy, I don't know his name, he plays Tig Traeger from the Sons of Anarchy. He's in the film as well, and a lot of times he has just grunts and is his noises that he makes, but he does a good job in it, in that he's probably one of the more likable characters that's there. He's one note. He's, kind of wants to rebel. He kind of follows Barry Pepper around, but at the end of the film, he's willing to sacrifice his life to save everyone else, and it gives him a little bit of reprieve in terms of being in such a bad movie, because his character has a little bit of an arc compared to the rest of them that just doesn't make sense. This movie is shit on all levels, and the only thing good about it is that it is so bad, and it stars so many A-list actors and a high quality production that just shit the bed. There's no other way to put it. They made one of the worst films of all time, and I can't recommend it, but if you got about 2 hours just to piss off, then give it a watch, and you'll learn exactly what a bad film is by watching this, because it has all of the pieces: bad acting, bad set direction, bad design, bad camera work, and just all around bad. Thank you.